So again, once you are trying to declare an array, you can just simply put the data type followed by the name of the array, for example, sales figure, and there you go. That way, you are trying to initialize them properly. And every time naglalagay po tayo dito ng identifier or the name of your variable, again, you have to follow the conventional way on how to do that. So, halimbawa, yan. It will always start from the small letter, tapos, ganyan. So, camel case. Tinatawag. Camel case. Student grade, yan. And many more. So, again, you can do this, or you can just simply put the square brackets after the data type. So, pwede po yan. Okay, so you can also declare and create an array in one statement with the following. And so, halimbawa ito, double sales figures is equal to new double, and we have here the 20. What does it mean? Gawin natin to para mas maintindihan natin. Double sales figures equal to new sales figures 20. And take note po ha, the square brackets are actually, just simply beside this, okay, the data type. Tandaan po natin yan. Now, what does it mean? Anong ibig sabihin nito? Anong gustong parating nito? This time, we are actually trying to declare an array with a name of sales figures, okay? And we are trying to put a 20, okay? A 20 slots, or we are trying to reserve 20 memory location for 20 double values. Tandaan nyo yun ha. 20, ibig sabihin, meron kayong 20 na container kung saan nyo ilalagay yung value ni sales figures later on. Okay? So, ang mangyayari dyan, you still have a sales figure, pero mag-i-start kang maglagay paunti-unti hanggang maka-20 ka na values. So, that's the idea, okay, of declaring an array. So, diba, kung 10 yan, so ibig sabihin, 10 lang din. Diba? So, kung gusto nating i-check yung, halimbawa, yung size ng isang array, pwede tayo agad mag-print dito. Tapos, pwede naman natin agad gamitin si sales figures dot length. Pero hindi pa yun mag-work kasi wala pa namang value si ito. Pero mamaya, titignan natin yan. Ayan. Okay, pero sige, paganahin natin. Ayan, wala pa. Sige, mamaya natin tuloy ito. So, sales figures, ayan. Makikita natin. Later on, we will actually try to take a look kung ano nga ba kung paano nga ba tayo mag-print ng values ng isang array. And we will also try to print the size of a specific array. So, kagaya nito, yan, yung nakikita nyo dito, new double. And kagaya nito, it's actually, we are just simply trying to take a look kung ano ang size ng isang array. So, mamaya kapag ipapopulate natin yan, mas magiging madali ang buhay natin. Okay? So, next here is ito. Kaya sinabi ko, the statement double, ito, will simply reserve 20 locations for 20 double values. So, when we say subscript, it's an integer contained within square brackets that specifies one of array's elements. Alright? Again, subscript po ang tawag dito sa loob nito. Ito. Itong nakikita yung value dito. That's what we call subscript. Now, a subscript is also called as index. Okay? In particular, you will see the term index in some error messages issued by the compiler. Yeah, majority of the time po kasi, index talaga ang gustong iparating yan or ang tawag dyan. Alright, now, in Java, any array elements are numbered beginning with 0. Take note, okay? And you have to remember this sa buong buhay nyo na. any array will always start from 0, not from 1. So when we say we are trying to create an array with 20 values, everything will start from 0. Okay, ito. And the last sales figure element is sales figure 19. Tingnan natin, ha? So this is double. Gawin lang natin itong 5, for example. Gawin lang natin siyang 5. Pagka maglalagay na tayo ng values per array element, will always start from ganyan, 0. Take note, ha? Mag-start ka lagi siya sa 0. So sales figure 0 and will always end to 1. 1.1, 1, 2, 3.3, ganyan siya. Huwag po tayo malilito, ha. Mag-i-start po lagi tayo sa 0 as the start of the initial value and will always end here. Dun sa mag-minus 1 ka lang dito, technically. Okay, so bilangin natin to. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you have 5 different values stored in the sales figures with a data type of double. Diba? So kung ipiprint natin ang isa dyan, for example, we would like to print the first value of index 0. Index 0. And we can now just simply use the sales figures 0 na object yan. Diba? So, the first value of index 0, using ko lang to, is ayan. Diba? Now, what if nagkamali kayo dito? Say, for example, you have declared a 5. You have reserved 5 memory slots for this variable. Pero unfortunately, ang nangyari sa inyo is na-i-print mo dito is the 5th. Okay? The 5th value. Ito. Or the 6th value. Yung recording po ba mapopost sa module? I'm not sure. Pero we are online and we are currently recording your conferences. Oh, bawal matulog, ha? Magising ka. Okay, so let's go back here. What if nagkamali ka? Just, na-type mo mali dito. You're trying to print a value from sales figures with an index of sobra ng required na index ng isang array na dineclare mo. Let's see what will happen. Let's try to take a look at our program here. Yan. Kung napansin nyo, it produced an error in which what we called array index out of bounds. Tandaan nyo, ha, array index out of bounds is actually an error na usually makikita natin sa array if nasobrahan ka or you tried to point a specific index of an array which is not visible or not active dito sa dineclare mo. Kasi technically, ang ginawa mo dito, you simply declared a 5 length array, but unfortunately, sinusubukan mo ding i-print yung pang 6th place, technically hanggang 5 lang siya. So talagang magkaka-error yan. Okay? So yun yun. Yun yung tinatawag natin na out of bounds. So if you use a subscript that is too small or too large for an array, the subscript is out of bounds. Nandito siya. And an error message is generated as well. Okay, so nagawa na nating dito, di ba? Mag-assign ng value. Nakita na rin natin. And you also know how to write or display this. Diba? So, to declare a double array ng money values, you can actually, or you might want to use the following. So, for example, ito, kung nag-declare ka dito ng array which is a money values, Yan. Pwede kang, again, mag-set ng specific size, which is ito. Or, you can just simply use an integer constant. Ito, itong number dash ELS, in which ang ibig sabihin lang ng number dash, underscore ELS, simply is another variable na kukunin niya na ilalagay mo dito. So, for example, ito. So, halimbawa dito, you have here array size, for example. So, array size na yan, it's an integer. Tapos dyan mo ngayon isi-set yung size na array. Diba? So, technically, ito pong array size natin is equivalent to the value of array size variable, which is 5. Ganun siya. Okay? Next. Yan, an integer variable. So, kagaya rin sinabi ko. Ganun din yan. Halos same. You can also perform a calculation to identify the size of an array, which is x plus y. Parang ganyan. This is only an example, ha? Or you can call a method, which will be discussed further in your module 2. And so, double money values, get elements. Alright, so, napakadali, di ba? Napakadali ng idea ng array. Kasi, ang gusto lang gawin ni array is to simply trying to, put the values inside a specific, specific na variable. Single variable with different sizes. Okay, next. Pwede na natin ngayon ma-print si size ng isang array. The size of an array is plus, we can just simply use a sales figures variable plus dot length. Ayan, dot length. In order for you to see or know the specific size, okay, of your array, you can just simply use dot length. Tandaan yun ha, dot length. So, alam naman natin na ang size nito is 5 kasi we have declared 5. Diba? And if we will try to right-click on that, and size of an array is 5. And take note, pwede po yung magbago. Depende dito sa kung anong size ni array na ilalagay mo. Ayan. Okay, do you have any questions so far? I hope na liwanagan tayo sa concept ng array. Okay. Wala naman. Okay. Punta tayo dito sa, itong you do it na to, take note ha, this is actually the part of the module in which you will literally do it on your own. So, hindi ko na i-discuss ito, but you have to understand the concept. This is basically the code demo ng discussion natin today, in which I think ginawa ko na siya. Diba? So, pero yung sa mga medyo hindi na gets, yung part na yon, you can just simply redo this part of the code. Okay? Yan. Next is to initialize an array. By the way, we already have done this, diba? So we tried to initialize a specific array and we tried to give them an initial value. Pero this time, and let's try to take a look at this, a variable that has a primitive type, such as int, holds a value. A variable with a reference type, such as an array, hold a memory address where a value is stored. In other words, array names contains references, as do all Java object names. Now, you can also somehow declare an array with a null value to it. Ito. Ibig sabihin, null means nothing. So, no memory address is assigned when you declare an array using only a data type, brackets, and a name. Instead, the array variable name has the value null. This is actually \0000 ang other name for null natin. Diba? Meaning, when we actually try to declare something and put null to it, meaning it's empty for now. Okay? Pero when you use the keyword new to define an array, The array reference acquires a memory address value, which what we have done earlier. Okay? And dito tayo. The following default values are used for different array types. Each element in an int array is assigned 0. Okay? And each element in a double or float array is assigned 0.0. Kung walang values yan ha. Yan. Each element in a car array is signed \u 0000. Kaya yan sinasabi ko. And Unicode value for a null. Yung tinatawag natin. Each element in a Boolean. Default value po ng Boolean is false. Take note. Pag true or false na yan eh. Each element in an array of objects, including strings, is assigned null by default. Now, you can also assign non-default values to array elements upon creation. And to initialize an array, you can use an initialization list of values separated by commas and enclosed within the curly braces. Now, anong ibig sabihin nito? Try natin itong tanggalin. Let's try to create here an array. Okay. Int array grades list. Yan, for example. Diba? So, grades list. Now, ang ginawa kasi natin dito kanina is simply we declared, di ba? We declared a specific value or size of an array by doing this. We also initialized the value of the array, which is 10. But take note, you can actually directly put a value, okay, without even initializing the size of an array. Okay, so possible po yan. You can just simply do that by putting double curly braces, okay, and the values separated by commas inside. So for example, the grade list are the following: 90, 93, 83, 84, 99, 92. Question: what is the size of the array? Okay, so if your answer is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, tama po kayo. Yan. The size of an array based from our example is indeed 6. Bakit? Because we simply put values inside that already without even trying to declare yung parang kanina yung sa you do it na part in which we are trying to put values one by one, di ba? This time, this is somehow masasabi kong shortcut kasi yun nga, nag-place ka na agad ng values sa loob ng array. Diba? Without even initializing them. Pero nag-initialize ka na diretso. Diba? So the size of this one, we can simply confirm that by simply putting grades list dot length. Ayan, 6. Diba? So, if we will try to print the values of grades list, again, saan mag-i-start ang index natin? I-start ba agad ang index natin dito sa 1? Never, okay? Never pong mag-i-start ang index ng isang array sa 1. It will always start from 0. That's correct. So if we will try to print the value of the first element in an array, again, that's 0. So kung print natin si length 0, ano to? Array required but int found. Ano natin yun resolve? Will always be, bakit kasi ganyan? Grades list 0. Ayan. So, dapat 90 ang magpakita dito. Ayan. Ito siya. So, again, 0 po ang start yan. So, this is the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The last value of the array is 92. So, kapag ka nag-6 ako dito, definitely, magpuproduce yun ng error. Mag-run yung program, wala kang makikitang error sa code, pero magkakaroon siya ng error logically. Because 6 is, of course, not the exact size of your array. So, ganun siya. Ayan. Nandito na tayo eh. Ito. Diba? So, int, modes of 10, parang ganyan. Parang ganyan yung example natin. So, again, you do it on your own. Pero this time, you just simply delete the following, which is ito, and directly store or put the values dito. And yes, it's also possible for you to put a value of a double data type inside this one. So, ganyan siya. And yeah, pwede rin po, possible din po na even character, possible din na maglagay tayo dito ng value. So, kapag character naman kasi, maglalagay ka lang ng single quotation, A, and B, and so on. You can also do this using string, and string values equals to, ganyan siya. Pero this time, double quotation, separated by commas. Ganyan siya. Possible din po yan. Aside from integer, from double, possible din po na gawin yan sa string and character. Okay? So, na tayo dito, using variable subscripts with an array. Now, if you treat each array as an individual entity, there isn't much of an advantage to declare an array over declaring individual primitive type variables. Yan. So, kagaya rin ng pag-declare natin ng mga variables in which ginagawa natin nung previous term, di ba, nagde-declare tayo ng integer, for example, int x equals ganyan. Yan. Wala rin masyadong advantage. Pero, magkakaroon yun ng advantage kapag gumamit na tayo ng subscript with an array. Which is ito. Itong ginamit natin dito. Okay? Now, suppose a quiz administrator decides to increase each score by 3 to make up for a question that was determined to be invalid, then you can actually write the following. So you can just simply put the final keyword, which will be discussed later on or in the next modules, kung ano ibig sabihin ng final. So you can do this. Pwede kang mag-increase ng size ng isang array. Kagaya na ito. Diba? So you have the scores. Yan. You have the scores. And by simply declaring an increased variable, which is 3, you are simply putting and the values of the first array element, which is 2, plus 3. Excuse me. Okay, gawin natin. Ito. Yung grade pa rin. Nasaan ba yung grade na ginawa ko? Control C. Yun. Yan. It's really possible for us to put final in grades adds, for example. And if we are planning to add a grades or plus 2 sa mga grades na to, gawin ko lang to kasi sa sobra. 87. Ganyan po siya. So, you can simply do that by using grades list. Tapos, the first element plus or equal to grades add. Ganyan siya. Anong ginagawa ni plus or equals? Ganito rin po. Grades list is equal to grades list 0 plus grades add. Ganyan po siya. Pero, bakit mo hahabaan kung pwede mo namang i-shortcut, diba? So, plus equals lang yan. Ganyan siya. So, magiging new value ni 90 here is 92. Followed by, of course, magiging, yun na siya. Yan, magiging ganyan na siya. 44 tuloy. Diba? So, if we will try to print the value of 0, grades list 0. Yan. See kung ano ang magiging effect nito. Yan, naging 92 na siya. Diba? Kasi we added plus 2 sa lahat po ng grades list na meron tayo. That's actually the concept behind adding variable subscripts with an array. Yan. With the 5 square array elements, this task is manageable, requiring only 5 statements. Yan. You can also reduce the amount of program code by actually using what we called the for loop. Pa? So possible po na gumamit tayo ng for loop instead of us typing this one individually. Diba? So, review natin. Ano nga ba ang for loop? Ano natin? Tanggalin ko muna to. So, what we are trying to do here is to simply add the grades add variable per element of an array. So, meron tayong for loop for integer. Yan. We'll start from the first value. Mag-declare tayo dito ng x. And the condition, which is grades list dot length. Okay, and what we call the iteration. Grades list dot length, ibig sabihin, mag-e-end lang yung program mo once na na-reach na yung specific end ng array. Ito, kagaya na ito, less than 5 ang nilagay niya dito, which is technically the size of an array. Diba? And take note, for every grades list, and this time lalagay natin si x variable, lalagay tayo ng grades add. Ganyan lang siya. Diba? So, mas maiksi and mas efficient yung code mo ngayon. Now, if you try or if you will try to print the values here, ganun din ang lalabas kanina. So, kung halimbawa gusto mong mag-print dito ng print line, grades list, 0, yan. Ganun din siya, 92. Diba? Oops, anong error dito? X pala dapat. Diba? So, 92. Now, maybe you are wondering, sir, I would like to print everything ng minsanan without even printing them dito ng isa-isa. Yes, possible din po yan. You can do that by, number 1, either putting this line of code inside here. Okay. Tingnan natin. Ayan. Nag-print siya isa-isa, di ba? Nag-print siya isa-isa dito. Or, by creating another for loop just simply for printing. Printing for loop, for example. So, ako kasi favorite ko ang for loop kasi, alam mo yun, mas pinapaiksi niya yung code mo eh. So, int x is equal to 0, grades list, length, x plus plus. Tapos dito, yun sa loob na yan. X grades list dot length pala to. Yan. So on. So if I will try to run this, let's use print lang muna dito. Let's remove this. So with using for loop, it will make it more shorter para wala siyadong trouble or triness of everything. Yeah, aside from the fact na mas shorter talaga yung code mo kasi nandun na lahat, yun nga, mas efficient siya in terms of the execution time and runtime ng isang program. Kasi minsan yun ang ginagawa eh. Unlike yung kanina na line per line, babasahin kasi yun ng JVM mo or virtual machine mo as line per line. Unlike dito, na kapag ka naka-for loop yan, babasahin nyo ng minsanan line, then will execute whatever things na nandito sa loob ng for loop mo. So I really suggest na i-master talaga natin ang for loop. The grades are written. Let's put here some space. The grades are na lang. Kalimutan ko maglagay ng plus. Ayan. Diba? So the grades are, kung print line naman yan, yun. 92, 95, 85, and so on. Diba? So, that's actually the purpose naman ng for loop natin. Now, we also have enhanced for loop. Yan. The Java supports enhanced for loop, and this will allow you to cycle through an array without specifying the starting and ending points for the loop control variable. Parang yung ginawa ko kanina eh. Ano yun? Inunahan ko na ito by simply using the dot length and printing them out all together. Ganun din siya. It's also the same concept nito, itong int val tapos colon lang and the score array. Ayan. Val is defined to be the same type as an array name following by the colon. Within the loop, val takes on, in turn, each value in the array. Yan. Pero ako kasi, mas gusto kong ginagamit ito. Although, yeah, possible din ito na gumamit tayo ng ibang klaseng, kung napansin nyo kasi hindi ko na tinuro itong part na to eh, kasi mas gamitin talaga ito in real life. Itong ganitong klaseng for loop. In this case kasi, this type of for loop, it will still matter and work as the same function kagaya nito. Pero, there is this kind of confusion later on na baka malito kayo kung paano nag-work at ano yung value na binabato mo patuloy kay val na sinusubukan mong i-print. Unlike dito, you already know that you're trying to print a value of the first sub which will start from 0 and will eventually end if the sub is less than the length of the array. Ganun siya. That's the enhanced for loop. Now, using part of an array, sometimes you do not want to use every value in an array. Now, for example, you will write a program that allows a student to enter up to 10 quiz scores and then computes and display the average. Kung natatandaan nyo, this is one of your activity last sem, di ba? And to allow for 10 quiz scores, you create an array that can hold 10 values. But because the student may enter fewer than 10 values, you might use only part of the array. For example, ito. Let's try to analyze this example program here. And so you have the following variables, which is, of course, first the initialization variable, the count variable, the total. The quit and max are simply being used to determine if you would like to repeat the entire sequence once again. So if the user entered 999, meaning the program will end. Ganun siya. So we have here a scanner input. Now, enter quiz score or 999 to quit. If the user have put here 999, automatic mag-execute tong part ng code na to. Pero if the user entered, for as long as the user entered a value not equal to the quit, which is technically the grades, and first of all, ang gagawin niya, the score that you have entered will now be stored at the first value of count, which is 0. So, mangyayari dyan, the score 0 is equal to 90, for example, ang tinype mo. Gets mo yun? So, magiging nandito siya. Now, the total here will simply compute the total, okay, of each scores that are being added together. So, pwede nyo itong gawin on your end and you can try this. Ang gawin nyo dito, isa-isahin nyo muna siya bago nyo siya i-run maigi. So, again, total is equal to total plus scores count. So, every time you are adding a score here which is not equal to 999, tandaan yan ha, not equal to 999, mag-a-add at pag-a-add, magpa-pile up si score or si total na variable. Okay? So if the count, which is, ano nga ba ang count? Yung etong 0, pero this time since you have added like more than one values of the scores, if the count is equal to max, which is 10, take note ha, you are only allowed to enter 10 scores for this program. So if the user have entered more than 10 or the 11th score, for example, ang magiging value ngayon ni score will be automatic quit. And ano yung condition natin kanina? for as long as the quit value is, or for as long as the user have entered or reached 999, automatic po na mag-quit yung program, mag-quit yung loop, mag-execute dito. Diba? Excuse me. Sorry. Yan. And it will simply print out the scores, summary, and will simply print yung mga scores mo per line. Now, if the count is not equal to 0, meaning for as long as the count value or the number of scores that you have placed here is not 0, it will automatically compute the average. So, ang average natin is simply the score or the total of everything divided by the count. Kasi ganun naman mag-average, di ba? Divided by the number of numbers you have placed. In this case, the count is 0. Or else, no scores were entered. Ganun na siya. So, try to do this on your own and try to analyze kung paano siya gumagana. Pero this is actually the best example of using part of an array. Dito kasi sa programming, hindi nyo kailangang mag-memorize ng codes. Sa totoo lang. Kung napansin nyo, you don't really need to, because each problem is somehow different. The approaches are somehow different. Kaya ang obvious kasi kapag ka nagkopyahan ng isang student or dalawa or tatlong student, kasi the approach will be the same. Programming is like an art. Paano ko nasabi? If you're an artist or if you love to at least draw, di ba? Animate things. Each artists have their own unique way to do their art. It's the same with programming. If you're a programmer, you have a different approach. You will always have a different approach kung paano ka mag-code. That's actually one of my question to everybody. Ano sa tingin mo yung approach mo as a student on how to answer those problems? Diba? Ako kasi, as a teacher, I really know some of you kung ginagawa nyo talaga yung program mo. Because based on the activities that you are submitting, nakaka-identify ako ng style kung paano nyo sinusulat yung codes mo individually. So napaka distinct para sa akin na na-identify ko kung ano or kung ginawa mo ba talaga yung activity mo or hindi. Diba? So that's actually one of the things which in programming. Kagaya rin sa music, di ba? So, we have different approach. Pwede mong tugtugin ng isang piece ng pare-pareho, kagaya ng tinutugtog in the most conventional way. Pero there will always be a separation between you as an individual musician, di ba? And the composer itself. Meron at meron. May distinct, may difference talaga. Not only distinct, pero difference. Di ba? So, let's go back here. Yan. Using loop, i-ano nyo lang to, gawin nyo lang to, napakadali lang naman. Okay? Now, for the last example here is searching an array using what we call parallel. Yan. So, suppose that a company manufactures 10 different items. And when a customer places an order for an item, you need to determine whether the item number on the order form is valid. Yan. For example, ito. Final int low 101, final int high is equal to 110. Now, you also have declared here a Boolean value, which is, the default is false. Now, ang ginagawa nitong if statement na to is simply trying to check if the item ordered is low and at the same time, the item ordered is high. Then definitely, the value of is valid item variable will now change into true. So, instead of a long series of if statements, a more elegant solution is to compare the item ordered, ito, variable to a list of values in an array. And this is what we call searching an array. You can initialize the array with the values, and which creates exactly 10 array elements with subscript 0 through 9. Now, say for example, ito, you have declared a valid values array with the following initial values, 101, 108, and so on. So, ilan to? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 10 different array values for this thing. Now, for each of this, agad ang ginagawa natin kanina, you are trying now to check if the item ordered is equal to the valid values X. Okay? So after the list of valid values is initialized, you can now use a for statement to loop through array and set a Boolean variable to true when a match is found. Yan. Itong is valid item kasi na to is simply yan. Ganyan lang siya. So kagaya nito, we also have what we call the parallel array. So I also have placed here an example in which you can understand what does it mean. So this is only the snippet of this entire code here. So on your end, pwede nyo itong gawin mamaya after yung klase natin or during or bahala kayo kung kailan nyo siya gustong gawin as example. So basically, what we are trying to do here, if the valid item now is equal to true, then it will try to print the value of the array kung saan siya nakatutok. Now, if 101 is equal to true, for example, it will now automatically print the value of that price, which is 0.29. So, ganun siya. If nandito na siya na array, or nakatutok na, nakapoint na dito yung X mo, dito, sa 213, it will automatically print the value of prices, which is 1 to 0.69. Nandito na siya. And so on. So take note, you have declared two different arrays and trying to search each array and printing out the values of the first array using the second array. Yun yung tinatawag natin na parallel. So dalawang array na yung chine-check mo, hindi lang isa. And that is really possible. You can also search an array for a range. Yan. Range match naman siya. Diba? See, for example, ito, you have here a parallel array, which is the discount range limits and discount rates. Okay. What this program is doing is that yan, every time na tinitignan mo dito, for example, napunta siya sa 1. Ayan. Pag napunta siya sa 1, sasabihin niya kung ilan yung possible na discount mo. Possible na discount rates. So, it's actually the same with parallel arrays. Pa rin siya. Pero this time, you are putting a range na tinatawag natin. And so, you can do this on your own. Okay? So, napansin yung image kasi itong mga to kasi gusto ko mag-type kayo lahat. Ito. Okay? So, that's actually the end of our discussion for array. Pero, sagutan natin muna ito. Itong tinatawag natin na sample problem. Okay. Number 1. According here, you need to write a program, not a method. Wag mo ng method. That reverses all all the elements in an array of doubles, no matter how many elements are in the array. We will try to reverse them. Take note ha, i-reverse natin. So, tingnan natin ha. Gawa tayo dito ng sample program. So for example, you have the following values. Tapos, 101.2, 10.5, ganyan muna. 5.5, 1.2, 63.6, 9.5, 0.2. Yan. Ang gustong gawin ni program natin based on our problem is to simply reverse all the elements. Re-reverse natin tong all elements na to in an array of doubles no matter how many elements are in the array. Ano kaya yun? Diba? I-reverse natin. We simply know how to print them individually and using for loop. Pero this time, we are trying to print, diba? We are trying to print them, pero pa-reverse. So, ang gusto nating mangyari dito is to arrange them first, diba? Before printing them out reversely. Okay, so paano kaya na naman mangyayari yun? Oo nga, kahit ako napapaisip, diba? Now, you can do this by simply sorting out the values of array. Paano nga ba tayo nagsasort? Now, imagine this. Imagine nyo to ha. You have the following values. 2, 3, and 5, 6. Hindi. Gawin ko na lang itong 10. We have 3 different numbers. And we are trying to sort them out and trying to print something na magpiprint yan as 3, 6, 10. How is that even possible? By introducing what we call another variable, which is a temporary holder for each variable. Temp holder. Ibig sabihin, kung gusto mo mag-sort or mag-arrange ng sets ng numbers, imagine mo to ha, you are trying to arrange them. Meaning, meron ka dapat pangatlong baso na paglalagyan muna. Okay? See, for example, you would like to arrange or sort 10 and 3. Ang gagawin mo, yung 10, ilalagay mo dun sa pangatlong baso. Yung 3, ilalagay mo dun sa unang baso. Diba? Yung 10 na nandito sa pangatlong baso, ilalagay mo ngayon sa pangalang baso. Nagets mo? So technically, by introducing another temporary variable in which you will simply hold the value of that, everything will be fine. Diba? So, ang gusto kasing gawin nito is reverse all the elements of arrays. So, pwede na yan. So, first of all, declare muna tayo dito ng initial value na 0. And siguro y, which is the length. Alam naman natin na ang length nito is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pero minus 1 tayo para saktong whatever the length of this one will now check the length minus 1. Para isasakto ko mamaya kasi yung ano natin, yung sa for loop or sa while loop na natin. Okay. Now, let's use here a while loop in which for as long as the x here is less than the value of y, diba? For as long, take note ha, for as long as the x is less than the value of y. So, ibig sabihin, matatapos yung loop kapag lumagpas na tayo sa length nito ni array. Oh, di ba? So, matatapos si loop pagka lumagpas na tayo sa length ni array. Siya. And let's introduce here another variable, which is yung sinasabi ko, yung temp. This will now be the variable in which we will store the value. Diba? So, gagamitan natin agad yan. Let's use temp and let's store the first values of array. So, take note ha, in-store ko agad si 10.5 muna sa loob ni temp. So, nandyan yan. Okay? So, ano mangyayari ngayon kay value x or value 0? So, si value 0 ngayon, okay, or value x, which start from 0, will now get the value of y. Take note, will now get the value of y. Diba? Ano ngayon mangyayari kay value ng y? Ano ba si y? Values that length, which is actually 6 minus 5. So, this is 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. Ito. Kukunin niya ngayon ito. So, ano mangyayari kay? Siyempre, nabakante na to, di ba? Si value ni y. Si value ni y ngayon will now get the value of temp. So, technically, andito yung tatlong value. Yung una, nilagay ko kay temp. Yung pangalawa, nilagay ko kay una. Yung si temp, nilagay ko kay pangalawa. Ganun siya. Diba? So, kailangan nyo mabatak sa pag-iisip ng mga ganitong klaseng solution. Because, this is very important in programming and you will eventually face a lot of problems like this in the near future, especially if you are working in a company already. Paano kayo magsusort na magsusort? Yan. So, tapos na ba ang program? Hindi pa. Kasi, ang ginagawa pa lang nito are simply printing the first or the initial value of values x, which is ito pa lang. Yun pa lang yung pinapapalit natin eh. Ito, tapos ito, yun pa lang. So, let's use here an iterator, which is plus plus x, and a decrement of y, para yung value ni length niya dito from here, dito na siya pupunta, and so on. Okay? So, try natin ngayon i-print. Print natin yan using for loop. For int I, equals to 0, values that length, and I plus plus. Ano i-print natin? System.out.println values ni I. Ayan. Ayan, maganda na yung code natin. So, run natin. So, using this variables, or values na nandito, ayan, we now try to reverse sort everything. So, ayan na, 0.2, 9.5, 63.6, 1.2, hindi siya nag-sort, 1.5, 10.5. Ayan. Ayan na natin yan. 0, I, values, I++, and so on. Minus. Dito is, ganyan. At least napaprint na natin siya ulit. Oh, bakit ganun, di ba? And so basically, the code is working. The code is actually working properly. Values x is equals to values y. Tama naman. Kakaroon lang tayo ng problem dito sa part na to. 0.2, 9.5, 63.6, and so on and so forth. So I hope na-gets naman natin yung concept nito. Ito kasi importante dyan eh. Kung paano natin maililipat si value ni temporary or ni temp. Itong dalawa, isa-isahin natin siya. Diba? Bakit na doble yun? Ayan. Anyways, don't worry, hindi naman yun yung problem nyo. Pinakita ko lang sa inyo kung paano tayo mag-sort ng specific na values. Okay, next is another sample problem here is write a program that displays the majority value in an integer array. If there is one, a majority value is one that resides in half or more of the elements of an array. I think ginawa ko na to kanina eh. Kaya tayo. Pero sample lang din naman to. Ano naman to? I actually use... Bakit nga eh? Mali naman yung napapakitang code niya. Output niya. Ito. So, ito basically gumamit ako ng dalawang for loop. And if you notice, I actually used here two different for loops and a for loop inside the for loop. And yes, it's possible for you to do that. Ano bang gustong gawin na itong program na to? It will simply display the majority value in an integer array. Ito, majority value of an integer array. So, I don't understand bakit hindi siya nagpapakita. Kasi dapat mag-work to. Anyways, that's the solution eh. Dun sa NetBeans ko, gumana to Okay. Anyways, lang yan. It will work as I'm actually confident na mag-work naman ito. Because it's my code after all. Ayan. So basically, dalawang for loop to. A for loop inside the for loop and we'll try to check the values. Tignan nyo values of x If the value of x is the value of y, automatic, everything will be the majority here. So, try natin, ilabas ko to. Ayan. Ayun, the majority value is 7. Pag nilabas ko to, nandito na siya. Majority, basically, ito lang yung pinaka-highest lang niya. Okay, so I think yun lang naman yung dalawang sample problem natin kasi maiksi lang naman daw ito. Ayan, for the written work, ayun na to. Sige, open ko na to ha. I will open the written work and the performance check. And for the written work, you have 15 questions. And as usual, you will be given a week for you to answer. Oops, baka makita yung sagot ha. A week. Due date, September 24. Okay. January 24. For the performance check, ayan. So for the performance check po, you have two different parts. Take note ha. Makinig po kayo dito sa performance check at kasi ito yung pinakamalaking points na meron tayo. So it has a total of 35. Ayan, 35 points. So the due date of this one is also until January 24. Ayan. So for the first part, you need to write an application that stores 9 integers in an array. Ayan na, may clue na kayo agad. 9 integers lang and display the integers from first to last and display the integers from last to first. So kagaya rin na ginawa natin kanina, yung pinakaunang example natin. Di ba? Madali lang to eh. Sobrang dali lang to. Pero this time, in number 2, allow a user to enter any number of double values up to 15. The user should enter 99999 to quit entering numbers. So it is also being shown. Yan, kanina, dun sa ano natin, example natin. Display an error message if the user quits without entering any numbers. Otherwise, display each entered values and its distance from the average. Technically, it's just simply the average. Ganun lang siya. Okay. Every time po na gumagawa tayo ng program natin, or nagsasubmit tayo ng activity. So, for example, ito, no? Tingnan nyo dito sa screen ko. Each program or each items, you have to make sure to, number 1, upload the screenshot of your code. Halimbawa, ganito. This is an example of a screenshot of your code. Okay? And, of course, pag sinabi kong screenshot ng code kasi, kasama na po dito yung output. So, kung ano yung nakalagay dito na output na nakikita nyo dito, isama nyo. So, kung naka-IntelliJ kayo, itong screen na to ang isasama nyo dito na i-screenshot nyo. Okay? So, you have to take a screenshot of that and upload them here. And aside from that, yung Java file po ninyo, kailangan nyo i-upload din. Yung Java file. Lalagay nyo dito yung Java file nyo. Yung Java file, pwede pong text file kung gusto nyo. Wala namang problema. Pero kung gusto nyo ring Java file, all you have to do is to simply navigate to this URL here. Idea projects. Nandito yon. See users, Jezreel. Idea projects. Sample Oracle project, SRC. Nandito po. Kung ano po yung URL nandito, nandun din yan. So, ito lang. I-upload nyo lang na ganyan. Diba? So, i-drag and drop nyo lang siya dito. So, everything is placed here. Depende kung saan nyo siya na-save. Okay? So, that's the first part of your performance check. For the second part, which is very easy. Okay? So, you have here 4 different debugging activities. Okay? And each activity is worth like 5 points only. Pero what you will be doing here is that you have here the sample program, diba? Now, each program, sinadya ko na merong error to. Take note, sinadya ko na merong error tong program na to. All you have to do is to simply fix the program. Na syempre, gagana na siya dapat. So, same din, you need to upload the screenshot of the program together with the output. Okay? So, and of course, the updated Java file, which is the fixed version na. So, technically, it's still an array. Ayan. So, may mga array tayo dito na problem. And it's very easy. And kung mapapansin nyo, naka-underline na agad yung mga error. Siyempre, kasi galing IntelliJ eh. Ayan siya. So, it's your, it's actually your job to identify kung nasaan yung errors natin. Pero yeah, may mga clue na eh. Nandiyan na lahat siya. Napakadali nga eh. Apat. So, the performance check is worth 35 points po. Again, if ever na need nyo pa ng oras, halimbawa ay hindi nyo pa siya kayang matapos within a week, sabihin nyo lang sa akin, PM nyo ako. Try kong tignan kung kaya pa talaga siyang ma-extend. Kasi magiging stricto na ako ulit sa deadlines. Kasi hindi na nga ako masyadong stricto sa deadlines yung last. Ngayon, stricto tayo, kunwari. Para naman pumasak pa sa yung iba. Baka kailangan ko lang istriktuhan eh. Okay, may question ba tayo? Uy, more than 1 hour pala akong